In the world of filmmaking, every frame tells a story. It starts with a vision. The amount of filmmaking gear in the market right now can feel extremely overwhelming. But what if I told you that you could create cinematic looks with budget options under $200? I'm going to show how we use low budget lights to create big budget looks and how you can too. The biggest misconception in filmmaking is that you need to spend a lot of money to get a good looking shot. This could be a camera, a lens, or a new gimbal. But the most overlooked thing is lighting equipment. In my cinematography journey, I've learned the hard way that owning lighting gear is so much more important than owning the latest camera. I've been running productions for the last 5 years, and I've realized that smaller, cheaper lights are so much more practical and versatile when lighting small spaces. To prove this, we shot a full commercial with low budget lights to show you that you can create film-like looks at home. The main lights we used in the shoot were the Zhiyun Fiveray M20Cs. These are a 20-watt RGB light, and my favorite thing about these lights is the modifiers that come with it. My biggest complaint with small lights like this is the ability not to shape light. This product exactly solves that, with the use of a magnet system that allows you to add a diffuser to soften the light, a grid to shape the light, and finally a pair of barn doors to flag off any spill. So this was an interesting shot, and this was inspired by the frames that we pulled off frame set. The biggest thing with these interesting shots is that you want to make it feel as natural as possible, as well as utilize what we're trying to shoot here. I shot this on a 20mm with an FX3, and I actually shot this on another day with my partner, and she just held the camera on the freezer as I was opening the doors, and she was giving me direction in terms of what to grab. And the main problem that I saw in terms of looking at the image is that there was not enough contrast in my face. The lights inside the fridge are actually daylight balanced, so I pushed the camera's white balance to around 4000 Kelvin to make them appear more blue. So this makes your daylight balance fixtures appear a little bit more blue, and naturally there's a little bit of blue when it comes to fridge lights and everything like that. And the problem was that this was lighting my face, and I wanted to add more contrast in that, and to add more contrast in terms of something that appeared blue, I'm going to add orange, yellow, or red into that spectrum, and what feels most natural is to add some orange. So you can see that there's a little light source here if you look hard enough, and that is actually that small M20C right there, and it has that diffuser on it, and it's set to like 10%, something super low, just to add some visual contrast back into my face in the form of color. You already have so much visual interest into this frame in terms of light and dark images as well, the checkerboard that we're always looking for, but to add even more interest and contrast, these are things I like to do in terms of adding small lights, just to kick me out a little bit more and to add color back into the scene. This is another shot, and this was another part in the piece where we keep getting closer in terms of a daily action that I do. And we only use one of the M20Cs here with the natural house lights that are in the apartment as well. So we blocked off this big window with all that light coming through just so we had some more visual interest and give us some room tone. And then there is a lamp here. And then I have some RGB bulbs that we just turned on, and then we set to a very low percentage. The Philips Hue ones that you can connect to Alexa, so I had those at like 5%. Like something that's not totally needed, but we just added it. And then there's a TV here, and then on the back of that, I have more of those lights on the background. But you could put any light there just at a low percentage as well. So all those little lights were set at 5% and set to a general orange color. Like film lights are different than, regular consumer lights that you can buy in the market. So we just set it general orange, and that was good enough. But the main light that we're looking at here is the M20C that we have above. So we just use a simple C-stand arm to boom the M20C overhead, and then that has the diffuser on it, and then it has that grid thing, and then it also has the barn doors so we can shape the light so much more. And this is what I love about these lights, is that they're very versatile in terms of booming something overhead like that is super small, and we only have this set at like 25% because this is all the data that we need to in terms of lighting this scene. This is what we're focusing on, so this is what I'm going to light here, and it's very top down to give us that dramatic look. This was inspired by the Batman, and it's the scene where the Joker gets caught in the diner and it focuses on that cup. So this is what we wanted to recreate and gives us that interest. And what that naturally does is whenever you top light something, it bounces whatever light coming from the material that is underneath or the flat board. So if this is a whiteboard, it would bounce white light. That's what a bounce board is used for. And because we have this wood color, this is going to bounce that natural wood tone back up into me. So we had this light set around like 3200 Kelvin to give you that warm hominess. And then that is offset here. And then that is also spilling onto my arm and everything like that. And then pushing even more orange into the shadows because of the bounced light. This is just using one light and as well as the available lights. So it's utilizing what we have in our scene and our home and building as much interest as possible. There's a lot going on in this image, but there's also a focus and a focal point in terms of being intentional of having that top light directly down to bring up the exposure in the middle of the image. So this is exactly why we can focus on this object and not be distracted on everything that's going around. So that's just something to consider when you're ever doing a shot like this where you want to focus on it. Usually they have a top-down source and there's a lot going on the background, but those are usually toned down. We want to add interest, but we don't want to overkill it. And this is exactly what we did here. So this was a macro shot of me making breakfast, and on the stove, there are these strip lights that are above that were naturally offset. So if I draw an overhead of the stove and then we're cooking over here, there's a set of strip lights that are naturally backlighting. So that was like our natural room tone or ambience, you can say, but we wanted to add a bit more highlights. And whenever I'm shooting these macro shots, we always like to turn on like a small little light, like these M20Cs here, and just move it around and position it in terms of like, oh, this is looking good. So what we did is while I was shooting it, I had the M20C just over here and the pan was here, and it was just adding a little bit of kick, a little bit more highlights to the object that we're shooting. So this is right here, and this is on here, and then even like these little things here. So this is just adding texture back into the image. This didn't necessarily look bad because there was enough interest, and you generally have a lot of interest with macro shots, but we wanted to add a little bit of highlights and everything like that and see how the light affected it. And then even inside the edit, you can see that I use the shot where we're moving the light. So it's just like rolling on the camera, positioning the light in one position. Okay, this looks good. Let's try another angle. And then you'll see that with all these shots and continuously rolling like that, you have a lot more to work with. When working on the edit, I didn't realize that, oh, this was great that we rolled this entire thing, right? So the big thing is like whenever you're shooting any macro shots, I always like to have a little light stand by side and have a little bit of different options of diffusion and also flagging it off. And this will just add that little kick and a little spice to your image in terms of adding interest. Also, what we wanted to do is add a lot of different types of scenes in terms of different types of lighting. We just didn't want to make it dark and moody and cozy in terms of warm light. We wanted to add some intentional in terms of like, oh, why is this scene red? Why is this scene blue? And this is exactly what we did here with some RGB lighting as me. Like I'm thinking I could be angry, I could be anything like that. And you can evoke a lot of emotion with this lighting. So if we were to look at this in terms of a top down, this is just easier to visualize. Camera is sitting right here. And then I'm sitting right here with my face off that way. And then what we did is we simply boomed out a light here. And this is my light source off here. So it's very important in terms of when you look at trying to top down light something, it develops a lot of shadows from my eyebrows and any feature that is proud of my face, obviously. And this gives me a not desirable look, and it's hard to develop shadows on the right place. So what you do is you just don't point the light down, is you generally have it biased off of me, which you can see here, as well as bias it in a direction so we can develop more shadows and more shape in the right direction. We want to develop all the shadows on the camera side, which is this side of my face. And this is very dramatic, so we don't necessarily need to add a hair light, which is red. This is just generally happens when lighting with RGB lights, especially red or blue or anything like that. This is very looky, this is very dramatic, and this is just following general lighting principles in terms of lighting on the opposite side of the camera. That's usually what all you need. And because this light is so strong and versatile, the one thing that I found out when using the light, if we were to draw a cross section of it, though that's like the diffusion that comes with it. This is like the grid. And then the barn doors sit right on top, and then the light is here. So because we already have that diffusion material, there is a small layer where the light comes out around like this. And what we did is we covered that in gaff tape. So we just wrapped gaff tape around the whole light so it wouldn't be spilling everywhere that the light was. So when we biased it here and we didn't have that gaff tape, light was spilling on the background and everything like that. And then we wanted this to have some red. Obviously it's a white wall, but we didn't want it to be overpowering overpowering where it's just like, this is the same exposure. So it's just like, this is dark, this is lighter, and then obviously we go into the dark, and then we play up on some color contrast, which completely separates my head. And this was just the daylight that was in the opposite room from the window that was already closed. So this is just playing up on the natural light that was there and available. If you wanted to have another light in terms of another color, if you wanted it deep blue, you can obviously put a light there. But we didn't have to do that because we were just playing with what we had. Now this is in the same room, but this is a different feeling. This is the ending of the piece where I'm actually inspired, and now I'm building the deck together with the assets from frame set. So how we did this is, again, just with one light with that M20C, using all the modifiers on it. So I am motivated from this screen here, but there's a lot of different colors coming from the screen. So this is going to be an accent light, and this is going to necessarily be secondary, but this establishes the lighting direction I want to have. I'm also in a room where we can assume that there is some sort of light fixture on, but I don't want to have a light fixture on that spreads across the whole room and just looks ugly. We want to bias it so there's a nice shadow on me as well as anything that we're looking at. So we just put that M20C up on a boom arm, and that has the diffusion, has the grid, so it controls the spill, and then it has the barn doors so we can really direct that light. And because we didn't want it to spill everywhere and spill over this back wall and everything else, we put that gaff tape around it to, kill that spill. It's a very good system, and I don't see another way that they could make it as versatile, but also like fix this one thing. So it's just a little thing that I don't mind at all, because in a lot of situations it could add a bunch of room tone by not covering it, but take away that room tone by putting the gaff tape around it. So it's not a complaint, it's just a quirk that you have to realize in terms of the light, because you'll look at your scene and you're like, where's that light coming from? And then you'll realize it's coming from that light there. So that is just biased here. And then you can say that, oh, this is the light side, you would want to put the light over here. But in terms of what's going on here, in terms of all that interest, I'm not too concerned about being on the light side. We're still on my back, which is considered the shadow side. And what I mean that is that the camera is directly pointing at my back, and there is a big checkerboard of color. I do have a second monitor here, and it could be turned on, but it was flickering and we couldn't really do anything about that. So that is just something to consider, because my head does get lost here and you get confused. So it wasn't really anything of too concerning. We just want to keep it as natural as possible. We just released a new set of LUTs that was used to color this project, as well as a lot of our other commercial work. These LUTs will transform your log footage in one simple click. Check out the link below to find out more. If you found this video interesting and want to learn about the one thing that 90% of filmmakers aren't doing that are slowing down their career, click on this video here.